Alright, so today we're going to learn about significant figures or sig figs. I called them either one in this video, so be prepared for that. Although they're pretty annoying, they're fairly simple to understand, and you'll end up having to use them a lot down the road. So what are significant figures and why do you need to know them? So one, they're like rounding in math. So they're pretty simple. That's like the general concept. And why do you need to know them is because during any type of math, science related math problem, it's important to round sig figs because say you're doing an experiment, it's going to keep your answers and results consistent and accurate because some measurement tools will provide more accurate or more precise answers than others. So that's why you have to round sig figs to keep it more broad and more general. And you'll be using it in any type of science, physics, chemistry, and biology. So you're gonna have to know the five rules of significant figures to be able to do sig figs. So the first one is that any number that's not zero is significant. So these four numbers right here, none of them are zero, therefore all of them are significant. Second is that any zero between any sig figs is going to be significant. So you see here we have 201 here. Because the zero is in between two other sig figs, the zero will be a sig fig itself. Third is that final zeros in a number with a decimal are significant. So because this number has a decimal, any final zeros or ending zeros will also be significant. Four, final zeros in a number without a decimal are not significant. So pretty much the opposite of number three. Because this number has no decimals, these final zeros right here are not significant. Five zeros in front of numbers are not significant, and it doesn't matter if there's a decimal or not. If the zeros are the first few numbers, they are not going to be significant. Now, I'll work down the first column right here, and then you can do the second column on your own, and I'll provide the answers at the end. So let's start with the first one. So we know that if a zero is in between two other significant figures, it will also be significant, so meaning this will have four sig figs. For this one, you know that since there's no decimal and there's a zero at the end, this will not count as significant, meaning that this will only have two. For this one, you see that there's zeros at the front, and because zeros at the front are not significant, then only these four will count, so there'll be four for this one. We see here that there's a zero at the end, but there is a decimal, meaning that this will count, meaning that all four of these are significant. Right here, there's a decimal at the end, so even though there's zeros at the end, they will still count without a number behind the decimal. So that means all six of these will be significant. And then right here, remember that zeros before the number will not be significant, but if there's a decimal after will. So that means these three are significant. Okay. And you can check your answers. Sorry, here are your answers. Okay, so now let's talk about rounding to a nearest certain significant figure. So first off is what you want to do is you want to look at the question, and it says second significant figure. So that means that you have to look at the second significant figure and then round to it, obviously. So let's look at the first one, right? The second significant figure here is zero. Because if a zero is in between two other significant figures, it will also be significant. So that means you'll have to round this 0, 1, 2, which will mean this will be 5.1. Is here, remember zeros at the front do not count, so you'll round this 5. So this will be 0.00066. Sorry. For this one, there's no zero, so it's pretty straightforward. Just count two significant figures, round the 9. This will remain as 29,000. Two significant figures here, so you just round the 3, so this will be 140. Just count 2 here, pretty straightforward, 0.3. And if for this one, just count 2, there's no zeros, round the 4, so this will just remain 24. So you can do the remaining 6 on your own. This is for the fourth significant figure, so make sure that whatever your answer is, there will be four sig figs in your final answer. And here's your answers. Okay, so now adding or subtracting significant figures. So when you add or subtract sig figs, you want to round your final answer to the least number of starting decimal places. And the reason why I say final is because throughout an experiment, you'll do several equations, but when you get your final, you don't want to round in between your small equations. But when you get to your final answer, that's when you want to round. So like if we look at this one, right, the smallest amount of numbers of decimal places for this one is 2. So that means this final answer will be 2, right? If you do it normally, you'll get this, but then if you look at this number, it has 2 numbers after the decimal places, so you'll round 2 numbers after the decimal place. And a good representation is right here. This number only has one number after the decimal place. So after doing all the math, you'll get this number. But because there's only one number after the decimal place, you'll round to this number, whatever that is. Okay, so I'll do the first three here, and then the last three you can do on your own. So if you add these numbers, you're going to get this. You're going to get 107 point a bunch of numbers. And then if you look here, there's only this number only has two numbers after the decimal place, meaning that you'll round this two numbers after the decimal place, meaning that this will become that. For this one, if you subtract these together, you'll get this. And then because this one has 3 after the decimal place, well, this one is 4, you're going to round 3 after the decimal place, meaning that you'll get this. Add these two numbers together and you're going to get this massive number. But remember that this number right here, 2, has no numbers after the decimal place, meaning that you're not going to round anything past this decimal, meaning that your final answer will just be 5. And you can pause here and do the last three on your own, and here are your answers. Okay, so finally, multiplying, dividing significant figures. So this little rule here is slightly easier than subtracting, dividing, in my opinion. You essentially round your final answer to the least amount of original significant figures. So say you look at this one, right? 65.2 times 401.96. You're going to get this big number, but because 65.2 only has 3 significant figures, your final answer is only going to have 3 significant figures. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, and you're going to round this number. So your final answer will be this. Now it can be kind of confusing, and so like this one, 23 times 2, it's simple to do in your head to get 46, but because of significant figures where you have to round the first sig fig, it's going to become 50. And this one's another example of how it could be slightly confusing. If you say 24 hours per day, which is the same thing as 24 hours divided by 1 day, because of this one sig fig of just 1, you're going to round 24 to 1 sig fig, meaning you're only going to get 20. So that's just an example of how they can be slightly confusing. So I'll work out these first 3 and you can do the last 3 on your own. So if you do 46.01 times 2.3, you're going to get 105.823. And because 2.3 only has 2 significant figures, you're only going to round 2 sig figs, so you're going to round this 0, meaning you're going to get 110. And remember, your final answer has to have the same amount of sig figs as the original one that you're looking at. So this only has 2 significant figures and this only has 2. So 999 divided by 9 is going to give you 111, but because 9 is only one significant figure, you're going to round just the first one. So you're going to get 100. So this number times this number, you're going to get this big number right here, but because 925 only has 3 significant figures, you're only going to round these 3. So in the end, after rounding, you're going to get this. And so you can pause here and do the last 3 questions, and when you're done, here are your answers. So thanks for watching, and I hoped you learned more about sig figs.